Hey guys, we're going to be revisiting bass strings for the first time since I talked about them a while ago, and it's going to be in the same style, just kind of me talking behind the computer screen, just so I can give you guys a better visual. And this time we're also going to be using D'Addario, we're going to be using this brand instead of Ernie Ball, and the reason is that I've recently just started using these a little bit more, and they have a little bit more of a variety of strings. But I'm going to break this down into the shortest amount of information possible. If you want more of an in-depth look at the kind of tunings that you can get and tensions and things like that, watch that other video. This is going to clarify just a few things from that video and just a few things that I want to add when it comes to strings. So when you're purchasing new strings, there's a few things to consider. Is this the first time you're going to be buying a new set of strings? Are you, are you thinking of moving up in gauge because of tension reasons, because of tuning purposes? Are you going to spend more on strings that will last longer? Are you going to spend, the general amount of money on strings and then, kind of clean them later and that kind of stuff? There's things to consider, basically, what you're gonna want as far as playing. And if you go advanced, if you're an intermediate to advanced bass player, you might have a preference of what kind of strings: flat wound, round wound, what kind of metal they're made out of. But I generally just go for the nickel plated D'Addario strings. And then I go for the general Ernie Ball slinkies when I buy those. So I'm not going to go as in-depth, I'm not going to go actually any far into the metal differences, but I'm just going to stay on tension. So, just a general kind of refresher and to get out of the way. This, about for the beginners really, in the other video I talk in-depth, like I open strings and then I'll go into what I think the tuning is appropriate for the tension of that string. It's a little different, a little vague, but I'm gonna try to condense it into a few generalizations. So you see that these are the normal string sets here, and the thinnest that you can get, not counting the piccolo bass set, which is the 20p to 52. This is for piccolo bass. This isn't something that we're gonna be talking about, but the smallest or thinnest gauge that you can get is 35 to 95, and this is a 4-string gauge, and the thickest that it goes to is 55 to 110. And these are all just standard sets that are made so that you can just kind of buy them as a set, pop them on your instrument, make any adjustment that you need to on the instrument, and move along from there. And basically, when you buy a bass for the first time, it is factory tuned EADG, so that is standard tuning, and these strings are all rated and measured for EADG tuning. So even if strings are made thicker for drop tuning, they'll say optimal for drop tuning, or you'll see like DR makes heavy drop tuned strings. Those are still tested and rated at standard tuning. So they assume that when you put those strings on your instrument, you're going to make any adjustments necessary if need be to make it so that they're adequate enough to be played, the notes can be heard, and if they're thicker string, then you'll get what you want out of it, whether it's tension or whether it's a lower tuning or what have you. So what will happen is you'll have the EADG tuning, and this is on a 4-string bass. From the factory, normally a normal gauge is what you see here, probably a 40 to 100. Some of the thinner factory models, you'll see the strings are thinner, are the 40 to 95. But I would imagine the most common that is, on the strings that are, if you open out of the box, is the 45 to 100 set. So if you're just buying a new set of strings for your bass because your old ones are just kind of, getting old and they're not, they're getting dead, then you can get a set of 45 to 100 comfortably tuned to EADG. You can go down to drop D without any problems. You can go even down to drop C. and it'll be a little bit wobbly, but you know, you'll still be able to get clear notes, and you'll still be able to practice at those tunings with the standard 45 to 100 set. That being said, if you've got a 5-string bass, so I've got one here. If you've got a 5-string bass, you're gonna have, it's kind of the same principle. You've got the B E A D G instead of the E A D G. It's just an extra thicker string on the bottom. And you call this the bottom, call this the top, because this is a lower note and this is a higher note. And same thing with the neck. You call this the top of the neck, which is really the bottom of the neck, and then you call here the lower part the bottom of the neck. Again, that's for a different lesson. So you've got the 5-string set here, and you'll see here that there are a lot fewer sets for 5-string basses than there are for 4-string basses, because since there is just this one string right here, the only difference that you're going to want to have is either a 130 or a 135 just to tune to B. Again, they're rated and looked at as the standard tuning mechanism. B standard is the standard tuning for a 5-string bass. So again, you're gonna get the thickest you can get is a 135 on a 5-string set, and again, that is the thickest that you want to go to on a standard set when you're tuning B E A D G, and that is something that I recommend even for beginners to do. If you've your first 5-string bass, you're getting strings for the first time, I recommend actually going to a 135 set instead of the 130, and I'll show you them right here. The difference is the 135 set is 45 to 105. So if you actually omitted the B string, and if you just used this as a standard 4-string set, it's 45 to 105. So those strings, even the bottom E string is a little bit thicker than the 100. You have the 135, and the reason that I recommend that is for tension purposes on getting that low B note to make a noise, because if you play bass and you have that thin or the thick string on the bottom, and you're playing that note, the register, for it to register through, you have to do everything you can, pluck it as hard as you can, hit it with a pick. But if you really want to get those notes in first position to ring out, I would recommend just getting a thicker set than 130, which would be what is going to come on your 5-string, and move from there, just if you're going to have that problem. But again, that is just my recommendation. 130 is just fine, and we'll look at the 130 actually. It's got the standard 45 to 100 that I recommended on the 4-string bass, and on that B, it's got a 130. So if you've got a 5-string bass and you're moving to your first set of strings, or this is good, or the 135. And on the 4-string bass, the 4-string version of this, which is the 45 to 100, or the you can go even thicker, but that's going to come up in a little bit. So now that we got that out of the way, which is just the general parts of the other video, we can get into the general question of what to do when somebody says, get thicker strings. So when you're playing, you'll generally have a preference, 4 strings, 5 strings, 24 frets, 20 frets, that kind of thing, whether it's stylistic or otherwise, you'll end up kind of coming with a preference, especially if you're in a band. When you have a bass that you're going to be setting up for drop C, or a bass that you're going to be setting up in drop D, or it's always going to be in an E-flat tuning, or just something other than standard tuning, a lot of times the first thing that you're going to be looking at is how thick the strings are to accommodate for whatever it may be. And a lower tuning, of course, when you have just the standard 45 to 100, is going to make it so that the strings are going to be really wobbly. They're going to sound, the notes are going to sound muddy. For recording purposes, for live purposes, it's no good. Especially if you're going to be doing it almost exclusively. So what ends up happening is you start getting those thicker strings. On the website and on these nickel ones, the thickest you can get on a 4-string set is 55 to 110. And and you're looking at putting those on here and getting to drop C comfortably. But if you're going anything below drop C, you know, you're going to want to adjust the bridge of the bass, and then you're going to probably have to file down the nut, which we're going to be talking about in a minute. But you have to do all those things even at this, and from 55 to 110, if you just slap them on here, I'd recommend, you know, it's going to go down, it's going to go to drop C, you know, C, G, C, F. It might even go to standard tuning. First it's going to go to standard tuning, but you're going to want to adjust the truss rod just a little bit so that the strings aren't too thick. But anything below that, of course, you're going to run into problems because, you know, some bands play in drop A. There's bands that play in B tunings, B standard, drop B tuning. You know, what do you do for that, especially if you have a 4-string bass? This is where I suggest using the 5-string advantage on the 4-string bass. The 5-string has a low B string, so it just has an extended range. It's not a lot harder to play, despite what people might think. It's just you know, just something to get used to. You know, it's like driving a stick shift, essentially. You know, you've got the B string, which allows people to go to a low tuning if they treat just the bottom 4 strings as their 4-string bass. So what I would say is treating these 4 strings as the bottom 4 strings of that 5-string bass, and thinking about it as omitting the G string completely. What that leaves you with is getting a set that is for 5 strings, so we can go even thicker, right? So we've got 55 to 110. That's the thickest 4-string set. We can go into the 5-string set, use the thickest 4 strings, and go 65 to 130. Automatically boosting you to, as you can see here, BEAD tuning. It's set for BEAD tuning, so it's going to be in B standard tuning to begin with. Of course, you're going to have to file down the nut, and the reason you want to do that is because the string will slip out of the place if there is not enough space for that thicker string on the nut here. If you want to go to a thinner set of strings, you might have to replace the nut completely or have to fill it in a little bit somehow, and you're going to have to make adjustments to the bridge. When you're putting in a 65 to 130, I do not think that you're going to be able to get away with just slapping that on a 4-string set, tuning to drop B, and hoping for the best. You're definitely going to have to adjust your instrument, and I recommend, you know, you'll be able to go to drop C, you'll be able to go to drop A, any tunings like that on a 4-string bass, you know, at 130. Of course, you can go up to 135 even, like we talked about, because there's another 5-string set, which is a standard, and which is right here, and this one goes to 135, so it's 65 to 135, and that, you know, that's a very thick set on a 4-string. So generally on a 4-string bass, that is as low as you're going to want to go, as far as you're going to want to go, as much as you can take it. For relative F sharp, G tunings, that kind of stuff, we'll talk about in a minute. But on a 4-string bass, that is probably the easiest way to get around some of those low tunings. And like I said, when you're putting on really thick strings, you're going to want to adjust your bass, because, you know, that the tension that string is going to give it for the tuning. Even if it's an alright tension for the bass, there's still the factor of the string staying on the nut and being able to have enough spacing in between the strings and the neck for it to be comfortable to play and all the notes to ring out in a fair intonation. So another question that I get is what to do with relative F sharp tunings, relative G tunings when you're going really low on bass guitar, because you're playing with dudes that have 8 strings, or you're playing with Suga type riffs and things like that. And what I recommend is, of course, you're going to want a really thick set of strings. 135 is not going to cut it, I would imagine. And I also do not recommend going and using a 4-string for this. 4 strings for that low of tuning. If you're going to do that, you would need an extended neck scale. Usually, it's a 34-inch neck scale on a normal bass, on just a standard bass. On a 5-string, it'll be a little bit more. So you want a 5-string or more, maybe a 6-string that has a 36-inch scale when you're tuning to these really low tunings. And you want to get the string set that is that is set for that, of course. And what'll happen is, you know, the lowest you'll be able to do is a B, E, A, D, G, and you can go even A, you know, drop A tuning, so A, you know, or A standard, A, D, G, C, F, or A, E, A, D tunings, you know, so you could do that, but when you're going down to those F sharp tunings and things like that, you won't be able to find the string set. So what I recommend doing is tuning the bass down to your relative F sharp tuning on an 8-string guitar. Just, you know, I would imagine tuning to the lower 5 strings of that 8-string. And when you're doing that, tune just with the standard 5-string. Of course, you're going to see that, you know, this is wobbly as all hell. Maybe even the E string is going to be extremely wobbly, but you might be able to get, and the other strings are just fine. You know, the other strings are you know, doing just well in those low tunings. It's just those thickest strings that you might need help for them. So what to do is to go to, this side is actually really good for that too. Getting a single string set that is custom to your tuning. Basically, what you want to do, what you want to do is go into the bass singles section here. This is just a reference, of course. I don't, you know, I'm not being paid by D'Addario, but you know, they have a very good reference. And you go to, we were looking at the nickel round wound, so we go to this, and you can see when this loads that the thickest gauge you can get goes all the way to 160. 160 is the thickest gauge, and you can get any gauge starting at 18. You know, they're very, very, very small gauges. You can get you can build your entire string set from just this list right here. And when you've got that 5-string, and you can get, you know, like I said, you can get the higher 3 strings to cooperate, but when you're tuning into the relative F sharp tuning, that B string and maybe that E string just isn't working out for you. I recommend, of course, going, you know, maybe to the 145, and you know, even up to the 150 for your B string. And of course, you know, if you want to go even farther down the line, try that 160 gauge string. On that, you're gonna have to file the nut down. It's not gonna work otherwise, and you're gonna want to set your bass up just so that that string is audible, you know, as far as F sharp tuning goes. And from there, you'll be able to you know, to measure tension. But like I said, I imagine 145 being more than enough, and you'd only have to replace 2 strings, which is just the low B and E strings for those relative F sharp tunings. Alright, so that about concludes this video. I want to make it as short and, you know, kind of to the point as possible when it comes to some of the things that I wanted to answer about strings and things that questions that I'm getting. But definitely ask me if you guys have any more questions, and I'll gather the majority of those questions and answer them in another video. And you know, comment, like, that kind of stuff. If you guys want to hit me up, I answer questions on Twitter. I answer them on Facebook. The questions down below in the comments are connected to Google+, so ask me on there, and I usually do my best to get at you. If you ask a question and it's extremely general, the chances are that question has already been asked, at least in the general time frame. So what I will probably be doing is setting up a video for that at a later time. But thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys next time.